So instead, since there's also no gravity helping you out, suction does the job that it normally does. All of your, to put it nicely, solid waste is sucked into this compartment right over here. Now all of that solid waste is trash. We get rid of it. Usually anytime cargo vehicles come up to bring supplies to the ISS and they burn up when they re-enter Earth's atmosphere, we send our trash along with it, including that solid waste. Your liquid waste, on the other hand, gets treated a little bit differently. We keep it all entirely separated out by sending it through this tube. Now the reason we keep it separated out is because we can actually take that liquid waste, we can save it, filter it, purify it, and recycle it into drinking water. Now as gross as this sounds, this type of technology is very necessary for long-term space flights. Water is a very valuable resource when you're in space. If you're on a closed, isolated system like a space station, you need to be very efficient. So recycling it from the waste hygiene compartment helps us out with that a lot. Already using this technology here on Earth, by the way, we're very polluted water sources. It doesn't taste too bad either. Now, speaking of water, the way water moves and behaves is a lot different in space than it is on Earth. If I were to take this water and I were to spill it, on Earth it would spill straight down to the ground, gravity down at it. But in microgravity, take a look at what happens. You can see these globs of water starting to float around the space station. You'll notice whenever two of these globs get together, they merge together and form a layer of water. That is held together by surface tension, which is water's tendency to strengthen itself. When you're in microgravity, that becomes the strongest force naturally acting on water. A fun fact, by the way, if you didn't know, about 60% of the human body is made of water. And as you might have guessed, that's also going to get affected by microgravity. So let's take a look at what happens in astronauts in space. Now, one of the first things you're going to notice, fluids are going to start to rise up out of our astronaut friend over here's arms and legs into their face, into their upper body. It's going to cause their face to go very puffy and their legs to go very thin. Because of that last part of the legs, some astronauts like to call this fluid shift chicken legs. Their bones are going to start to lose calcium and their spine can go up to 2 inches longer. Also, while they're in microgravity, their heart starts to shrink. But don't worry, whenever they return back to Earth, for the most part, these changes go back to normal. As long as they're taking good care of themselves in space. You see, the longer they spend in space, the worse these types of changes, symptoms are going to be. If you're not taking good care of yourself, that just makes it get worse even faster. So that's why it is extremely important astronauts don't spend too much time in space at once. And while they're up there, they need to maintain a very healthy diet. And this is especially important, they need to exercise a lot. One of the biggest changes that happens in microgravity is your muscles start to shrink since you don't have to fight against gravity to do everyday tasks. Exercise is one of our best ways to deal with this, to build that muscle back up. However, the way you exercise in space is a lot different than it is back on Earth. If you think of building muscle, usually on Earth you think of lifting weights. But in a weightless environment, that doesn't really do you much good. So instead, we have to be creative to pick up resistance. So for example, a machine like this, normally we would use this for cardio. Get yourself seated, grab on the handlebars, put your feet in the pedals, start cycling, and the machine itself starts pushing back against force you give it. That's what creates that resistance, that relying on gravity. So between all of the hours and hours of exercise astronauts are going to have to do, as well as all of the hours and hours of science experiments, astronauts are really busy throughout the day. They are so busy, in fact, that in order to help make things a little bit easier for them and lighten their load, we've added a few permanent crew members to the ISS. Allow me to introduce the Astronaut robots and the Bumble Queen. These electronic members of the crew are cube-shaped and about 12.5 inches wide. They use fans to move themselves around the space station. And they help out astronauts with some of the more mundane and routine tasks they need to do throughout the day. And by doing that, they free up more time for the human crew to do things that only actual human people can do. Each of these robots has a touch screen so the astronauts can interact with them directly, 6 cameras to look around the space station, and an arm that can reach out and grab nearby objects. These are relatively new developments. We only first started using them a couple years ago, back in 2018, so we're still getting used to getting the most value we can. But robots just like these are going to be essential for our long-term goals, like sending astronauts to the Lunar Gateway Space Station project, and one day sending astronauts to Mars. Now, at the end of a very long and busy day, astronauts